the first thing I think, I have a story to tell you based on that, but I think, like, based on what you were saying, Friends was one of the first shows, maybe even the first show to sort of break away from what a family is. And I think, I was not there at the very beginning of Friends, I came in the second year. So, but I know that they went in and they pitched the idea of the show as when your family is not your family. When it's your friends, it's the people who you're with every day, your workmates, the people you're with every day, not who aren't your family. And this is the new family. And what would a show like that be? And so that's sort of how it evolved. And you took stories from real life. A lot of when I joined Friends, I was probably, I think I was about 32 years old, and I was old. And a lot of the writers were 25, 26, 27. But so in that age range of the actual characters on the show. And so we could take a lot of stories from our lives and turn them into actual stories. Like, for example, speaking of fragility, the story where Joey's girlfriend, I think Chandler was dating Joey's girlfriend with one leg, if you remember that story.
Of course.
And that came out of a story where Joey was afraid to see this girl because he had dated her before, and he told the story about how he took her wooden leg and accidentally threw it on the fire. And that came out of a story. Him telling that story was just funny by itself. But that came from a real event where one of the writers had gone on a date, and he went to the bathroom, and he went to pee in the bathroom, and before he could flush the toilet, he knocked the girl's makeup kit into the toilet. And so he climbed out the bathroom and just went home. He climbed out the bathroom window and went home. That's the real story. And that got turned into the story of Joey throwing her leg on the fire.
So he felt guilty somehow, yes. And then it turned into a funny story.
He just said, no, this is not going to work. I'm just going to leave the door locked and go out the window.
And then he made a whole episode.
Yes.
I hadn't thought about that episode. It's really like so tragic, yet so funny.
Yes. And another story that comes out of real life was at the beginning of season 2, when I was starting, they had learned their lessons from season 1, and they needed more Phoebe stories. Because we sort of have lots of great Rachel and Ross, great Monica, great Chandler. We need Phoebe. Mm-hmm. And so our homework for the weekend was to go home, think of Phoebe stories. And my wife had a story about how there was a knock on the door. She went to open it, and there was a man there, and he said, I'm looking for your roommate. And she said, who are you? And he said, I'm her husband. It's like, I didn't even know she had a husband. So that's what we had. And I took that in the next day, and everyone went, that's great. And it evolved into, this is how good everyone was there. It got turned into the story about Phoebe's ex-husband, who used to be gay, but now he's straight, and was the ice skater. Yeah.
I remember that episode. Everybody was surprised about, does Phoebe have an husband?
Mm-hmm. So that was a jumping off place for the story, and it turned into a really, really great story.
I was also thinking about the episode of the Princess Leia fantasy.
Yeah.
It was so strange. I imagine not everybody had this fantasy, but you managed to turn into something like, you believe it's universal fantasy.
Well, that's how you go, you talk about, like when you're in the room with all the writers and everyone's talking about, I think maybe the story the idea had already been, what about fantasies, talking about fantasies and things like that. And someone probably said, like you want your girlfriend to dress up like Princess Leia. And everyone's like, all the guys and the writers, the male writers, like, yes, yes. And so it becomes that. And
like the golden bikini.
Only the golden bikini. Only the golden bikini.
So a whole room thinking about the golden bikini.
Yes. And later, I wrote that with another person, and later we got a letter from, because it had been on TV, and then we got a letter, and someone came to the office and said, Michael, you have a letter from George Lucas. And I went, oh no, oh no.
What have we done?
But we read it, and he said, I really enjoyed the episode. I never knew the gold bikini was a sex fantasy. He was like, yes, yes he did. Yes he did.
Nowadays.
And great episode, so.
Princess Leia got older.
Yes.
So he liked it.
He liked it, yeah.
Like that.
He said he had a great time watching it.
Oh. Of course, I was also thinking about the more playful ones, like you think about Chanandler Bong, or you think about...
I wrote that.
You wrote that?
I wrote that word.
Oh, really?
Oh, what's the story behind that?
We were just, it was a very small room. We had to write some jokes and for the game. And it was just me, the creator of the show, David Crane, and maybe a couple other people. It was like trying to write questions. Everyone was at lunch or something. And so it was like, what's the name on the magazine that comes every day? And I said, Chanandler. No, the executive producer said Chanandler Bing. And I said Chanandler Bong. And then I said Miss Chanandler Bong. That's what went in. And also, like, what is Rachel's favorite movie? She said, like, Dangerous Liaison. You know, what's her real favorite movie? And I forgot what it was like. Some crazy.
It's so playful in the way you think about it, really, because you shift from very serious episode, the leg one you were thinking about, or Rachel quitting her job without having a backup plan, like
Right.
with the fear. Chandler and Joy say she needs to have the fear, and then you manage to do the same thing. So represent this insecurity you could have in life, but through really playful things like that.
I think you have, for a show, it's a comedy, so you have to take real life. That's the best comedy, and I think that's why Friends was so successful, because you took real things, but then you have to put funny on it.
And when you have a writer room working such a fast-paced rhythm, where do you start from? Do you take the structure of the episode first? Do you take funny stories first?
I think you take funny stories first, and sometimes it's real life stories, and sometimes you think of something that might be funny, and sometimes you think of, like, if two people were in a relationship like this, what are some funny things? Doesn't necessarily have to be real, but what are some funny things that would happen to this? Like classic things like meeting your parents, or your first date, or the first time you have sex, or things that are universal. And sometimes they're serious and you can make them funny. You have to, because it's a sitcom, it's a comedy
Right.
show. Or sometimes they're just funny, like throwing the leg on the fire. I mean, spilling the girl's makeup into the toilet is funny.
It is.
Yeah.
Maybe not at the moment, but 5 years later when you're thinking about it and telling it into your friends, yeah, it's pretty funny.
It's pretty funny to say.
There was one where a real life example was, we were all sitting around because there were so many writers on Friends, like I said before, there were probably like 12 or 13 writers. You could break off into different rooms if you were trying to get stories. You need 24. There were 3 stories per episode, so you need 75 stories for the year, and big stories, medium stories, little stories. And so the people could break out. You could take 3 writers could go over here, 5 writers could go over here, and just cut stories. And while we were doing that one day, we were in an empty office, sitting on the floor, and it had a big cabinet, big wall cabinet, and if you open the cabinet, you could fit inside the cabinet. And one of the writers said, I'll bet I can fit inside this cabinet. And we all went, okay. And so we climbed inside the cabinet, and then we got a stick and locked him in the cabinet for the day. And that became a story later where Chandler was locked in a box.
Oh God. So really happened during the set, and then you turned into... How much time did you have to structure the story between one episode and the other?
At the beginning of the season, it's weeks, and then it becomes days, and then it becomes hours. You have a line producer on the show. The line producer is the guy who's sort of the money, the organizational guy. He's not a creative guy. He's creative in his organization. But, like for example, we wrote this episode where they go down to see the Jean-Claude Van Damme movie.
Oh.
So we wrote that, and then 2 days later we went down there, and there's a giant Jean-Claude Van Damme movie on there to film. I was like, how does that happen in 2 days? Anyway,
So it wasn't scheduled, it just happened.
It's because it was for the show, the TV show.
Okay. Oh, it's crazy. So people really rushed into that.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So anyway, this guy says, it's like a shark. The show is being followed by a shark. And so at the beginning of the season, the shark is this far away, and you have scripts. And then as you go further along, the shark gets closer and closer and closer, and you have to get to the end before the shark gets you.
So the shark in the analogy is the line producer?
The shark in the analogy is this time.
Wow.
So at the beginning of the season, we might start a month or 2 months before the show actually starts. And so you're creating stories and writing scripts, and hopefully you have, my goal was always to have like 8 scripts done. When you start shooting the show, you have 8 scripts done. And then you work from there until you might get to the end where you have no scripts. And so many, many, many times, the last 2 or 3 episodes might be just written by, you have a story and you spend a couple of hours saying, this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens. Then you go, you, and you, go write this. You, and you, go write this. You, go write this. You, go write this, and come back in 1 hour. And you come back, and it's a script, and you can tell it's written by many different people, but the people have worked on the show, and they know the show, and they know what it feels to make a friend's show, a friend's script. And so it's close. And so then you can spend the next few hours smoothing it out, making it a whole episode. And then at the end of the day, in 1 day, you have a script. And then you can work on it, as long as you have a script to give the cast on Monday.
Was there an episode you recall where that fast-paced rhythm was really like something you could burn out?
Yes, I remember. By the way, if you're ever watching episodes and you see strange combinations of writers' names,
Right.
it's because when we wrote those episodes, we would put everyone's name in a hat. Even the writer's assistants, who were the people who typed everything up. And when everyone's talking, they're typing it. When we're fixing the scripts and sitting around the big table saying, what about this, what about this? They're the ones changing everything. So even they got to put their names in the hat. And then you draw the name out of the hat for a story and for a teleplay. And story, at this time, a story might be $10,000. And a teleplay might be $25,000. So
You had a line to follow.
So you would get, it's sort of a bonus, a prize at the end of the year.
So you just assign it to each other based on...
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you ever see strange combinations of names, like if you watch all the episodes, you go, okay, I know that person, I know that person. Oh, I've seen many episodes by those 2 people. I've never seen an episode by that guy and that guy. That's one of those. That's one of those scripts.
Okay.
Know that script was written in 1 day.
Wow. Okay.
And something you just said, I forgot.
If there's
About
any
the-
episode that was really like something you could burn out when you were working, maybe because of the very fast-paced rhythm.
There was one episode where it was I'll tell you, it was the one where Rachel quit smoking, or Rachel can't, when Rachel smokes.
Where she had to go to the terrace because
Yes.
everybody was deciding about
Yes.
the job without it.
And that was a script that, for some reason, it was like it was near the end of the year, so it was towards the end, but something about the script was not working. We did a table read. Basically, I'm sort of going I'm bouncing all over the place, but you would have on Monday, the cast would come in and read the script, and then go and rehearse, and then you would fix whatever you thought was broken in the script. Then Tuesday, you would go see a rehearsal and then come back. During the day, you're doing the next script.
Because it's live studio, so.
And then the afternoon, you go watch and fix it again. Wednesday, during the day, you're working on the next scripts, and then you go watch. And then Thursday is cameras, and then Friday is the show. So every day, the script was just not working. We couldn't figure out why. And I was sort of the boss on that script. And
So the story came by you?
it did, but it was my turn to sort of be in charge
Okay.
of that particular script. And nothing we did seemed to fix it. And I couldn't tell what was wrong, which was frustrating. And so the executive producer of the show, David Crane, after one sort of bad run through, he said, "You know what? I'm going to come in tonight and I'll help." And I was like, "Oh, thank God, because I don't know what to do. I was just burned out on this. I couldn't do it." And we tried, and at a certain point, and we'd been working every day, every night until 4 in the morning. And then on the Thursday, the bosses got together and they said, maybe we just don't do an episode this week. And the writers who were burned out did not go, "What? No." We went, "Oh, thank God. We can go home. We can go home." But then they spoke to Warner Brothers, the studio, and they spoke to NBC, the network, and they said, a bad episode of Friends is better than anything else we have. So
That says it all.
so just do, and they came back and they said, okay, we're going to look at it one more time. And we looked at it one more time, and somehow it just kind of, maybe there was relief or something, but it just kind of worked okay, and it turned out to be okay. So that was the last episode I wrote for Friends. That was my last season there. But that was talk about being burned out.
Burning out. And can you recall what really made it click? Like
I don't know.
Vivian,
I don't know
You
what
still
was
don't
wrong.
know.
I don't know what was right. It was beyond my capability.
It's
Well, it's an
crazy.
accumulation of work
Yeah.
over the years.
But there's other scripts where, for example, there was one where, who was it? It was somebody had to write a paper, or Joey Ross had to write a paper. No, I think Joey had to was studying for something or whatever, and Chandler and Ross were saying, Chandler was saying, you have to study. You have to study. It could have been Chandler, but I forgot who was it. And Ross was saying, no, come on, we got to go play. We got to have fun. And it wasn't working. And the actors said, this is not. I mean, Ross
Wouldn't do that.
David Schwimmer said, Ross would not do that. Ross would say, you must study. And Chandler would be the one to say, come play, or whatever. And so we're at a point where we're going to throw that story away because they're right. It just doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And one of the rules in writing, especially for movies or TV, is you can't give actors' lines to other actors. You can't just say, oh, you don't say it, you say it. And if it was someone, if you have a line,
Right.
and you have a line, and you go, just switch lines. Because the actors go, well, what am I, just I can't just switch lines, that's not my character. So here we're about to throw out this story, and I said to I was sitting here at the table, the executive producer was right there, and I said, I know you don't do this, but why don't we just switch lines? And Ross will be the one who says, no, you must study, and Joey will be the one who says, no, come play, or Chandler, whoever it was. And he went, And he went down to the actors and said, do you mind if we just switch the lines? And they went, oh, that's what we were going to say. So it's like, okay, great. So we got to save that story instead of throwing it.
Wow.
So at that point, I knew what to do.
And it was so funny in the end to see how Ross enters the room and see them actually playing, like spading the paper, and Ross really being like a teacher in that. It was funny.
So in the original version, it was the opposite.
It was switched.
But did the actors have like generally a lot of input with the writers? Did they choose to decide?
When I was there, not so much. I understand later they did start to say, I won't say that, I don't want to say that, I want to go home. But when I was there, they had very, not that it was not allowed, but they were very happy with everything, and there was one moment where we had a story where the duck swallowed the wedding ring. And in the original story, I think Ross and Joey, Joey and Chandler took it to the vet, or somebody took it to the vet. And it was very obvious that that duck was dead, and this was a new duck in the story. And the actors came and said, we can't kill the duck. Don't make us kill the duck. America will hate us. I said, okay. So we changed it so it's not so clear.
You appreciated the suggestion.
Yes. He said, we don't want to say that.
You know, I had so much fun watching the episode of the Smith and Kitten. It was one of the funniest things because it was so simple to me to see how we just see really a simple Monica. Like you can see that she has a bit of a crush, and that line, I'm asking you because I know that it is mine.
I wrote that.
That is yours.
She's done smart.
Yeah, there's a lot of research.
But that was a script I wrote with, again, at the time I had a partner, and that was where Monica meets Dr. Tom Selleck. I forgot his character's name, the ophthalmologist. But Smith and Kitten and James Bond. That was a script where many times you would write a script. Basically, people come in with story ideas. Everybody sort of sits around and breaks a story, puts the story together. You go off and write an outline, bring it back. Everyone takes the outline apart. This is in the beginning, it's a process. At the end, it's very fast. Sometimes no outline. But anyway, this was early, and so then you come back, and then you go off and write the script, and then you get some notes on it, and then you write another draft of the script and bring it back, and then everybody gets it again. So everyone takes it apart. So I'm happy with that script because sometimes the whole script will get thrown out and you have to start again. Sometimes 80% of the script will change, and sometimes 20% of the script will change. And that was a 20% one, not much change.
That was the 20%.
Not much change in that, so I'm proud of that script.
Wow.
So, sorry. So, like talking about like your experience working with friends, I just have like a general question about like the environment, more about the environment of sitting in those writer rooms, working with your colleagues. Like how was it? Like what sort of environment was it? Was it amicable, competitive?
It was definitely amicable.
Yeah.
It was slightly competitive.
Okay.
And but very, very fun. And someone would say, what's it like doing that? And I would say, it beats working. Because
That's a good sign, yeah.
You go in, you're sitting at a big table. If you're not writing a script in your office, you're sitting at a big table with 10, 11, 12, 13 other writers. And they're all very brilliant. Although every year, 1 or 2 would get fired. So out of 13 writers, 10 are very brilliant.
Okay.
And
Wow.
maybe a couple are not so brilliant, and you learn later.
Younger Games.
Yes. And then, so you're sitting with these people, and it's, I used to compare it to when you go to a party, and you have to be the funniest one at the party. So now you're at a party where everyone is the funniest one at the party.
You're like the Chandler of the writer room. You kind of really get into him.
It's like that, but it's very fun. It can also be very boring.
Right.
When you're sitting there trying to think of a joke to replace a joke that you already think is okay. I guess okay is not good enough, but when you already think is pretty good, and you're there, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, and what would Ross say? What would Ross say? And everyone's like, and there's like Red Bull and candy and toys and things, just like, And so there's those moments, and then there's great moments where it's just everyone's funny and on, and then there's lots of jokes that aren't meant to be in the show that are people are trying to make each other laugh, and so.
How do you pick the jokes, like, in general? Is there like a consensus, or
It's kind of a consensus, and then there's the guy, whoever's running the room,
right.
that's the person running the person who's in charge of sort of that script, can kind of influence where it is. But one of the things about Friends, and I think one of the reasons why it took so long, like we're there, till 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning every night, was because everybody's vote was equal. From the most experienced person to the least experienced person.
Right.
And so everybody got listened to. And it might take you till 3 in the morning to get a consensus on something, but in the end you also have an episode of Friends. So, I mean, I've worked on shows where the person might go, no, we're done, next scene. And you might think this could have been better. But,
Feel those sweets.
Yeah.
You were, I want to just stick on sweets because you were about to say something funny about candies and Friends before.
Well, I said we should. Novi, the best candy in Italia. La prima dolce in Italia.
Novi, can we get a sponsorship?
I don't think we're
please?
sponsored yet by them.
But anyway, Michael was telling that there is a funny yet sad story about sweets and Friends.
Well, we would go down. Friends had a lot of. It's called product placement, where you'll have a scene where it might take place in a shop, and the shelves will have lots of items and products, real products, and companies would pay money to have their product put into the show, and that's how you can make some money on the show, like Coca-Cola, or there was once what are those watches? Starts with an H. Very fancy.
Expensive brand?
Yes.
My God.
Anyway,
Yes.
No, the Rolex.
no, Tag Heuer.
Okay.
Starts with a T and an H. But so there was a scene where there were a lot of Tag. This is not the story, but one Christmas everybody got brand new Tag Heuer watches. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Tag Heuer. Michael Curtis, Perugian. And we thought, oh, that's so nice. That was so nice of the producers to give us these watches. And then we went down to the set, and the scene was in a shop, and there were Tag Heuer things everywhere. And we went, oh, all the cast were all wearing these watches. And we thought, oh, never mind. They got them for free. so never mind. I guess the thought that counts. But one day, so we would see this all the time.
Right.
And so anyway, when we were filming the show in London for those wedding episodes, we were all back. There was normally on the stage when you're filming, all the writers are there to fix jokes and to hear the scenes and put them together. In London, the stage was very, very small, so there was only room for cameras. And all the writers were back in the cafeteria. And there was nothing to do because it was basically done. The show was, we just had to film it. And so we're drinking Boddington's beer. Boddington's. Lots of Boddingtons. So anyway, and we started going, Boddingtons. So anyway, the next season, it's the beginning of the season, and one of the stories was how Phoebe didn't get to go. And the story was how you feel left out when your friends come back from vacation and they're like, remember the boat ride? Oh yeah, the boat ride. Remember, hallelujah, what was hallelujah? And Phoebe's like, and so they're all going, Boddingtons. And she's like, I feel left out. So anyway, Boddingtons sent tons of merch. Boddington's dartboards, Boddington's boxes and boxes and boxes of Boddington's beer, and T-shirts and posters down to the stage, and it obviously went the cast, and we're going one day, and the line producer says, "There's so much Boddingtons down here. Do you guys want any of it?" And we're going, "So damn it, we wrote that." We wrote the
We
Boddingtons.
deserve that.
Send it
It's all ours.
send it to the office now. So
It would seem like a Gunther line.
I wrote in one script in the first draft where Ross was talking to, he was trying to call Emily in England, and he's on a little cell phone. And I said, Ross enters with a Nokia Razor phone, and he's got 12 of them. so that everyone would get one.
You know that there's a big discussion among people that were like, Emily was so hateful, and people that were like, oh, growing up, I kind of understand Emily.
Yeah, Emily was fine. She was
I mean,
she was perfect. The character was perfectly fine. She was right, and
you were on that position.
yeah.
She was right.
And I think later, the episode where it might have been the same episode where she says to Ross, "I will only come if you don't see Rachel ever again," which I think she was right to ask that, but also it's devastating to Ross, and I mean,
You kind of have to pick.
yeah.
So crazy.
So that was a great moment where the actress was pregnant, and so she couldn't come to America to film those scenes. And so we filmed them where she was in London on a set that was just the bed. And then David Schwimmer was at home in his apartment, or his house, and he filmed, and it was all hooked up, and so we filmed her in London. I was in the office at 5 in the morning, because that's when it was 4 in the afternoon in London. And so we filmed her stuff, and he spoke his lines on the phone into the actual, she was actually talking to him on the phone. And then when we came time to shoot the show, we showed her scenes on the screen, and we filmed Ross at home talking on the phone.
So you always had a reaction of the live studio audience
Yeah.
present.
Yes, whenever we
Yeah.
filmed scenes in advance, we would show them in the story, on the screen, so
Ah.
we'd get real audience.
And during that process, I mean, because you said you also had to intervene and change some things during, like how did that work? Like in,
That would be, because I was on the phone, because I wrote that episode, so I was on the phones, and I could say something like, David, could you maybe do a little bit more like this, or I would say, I forgot Emily's name, but Emily, could you maybe do it more like this? And they go, okay, fine. And the whole process took 45 minutes.
So how long did it take in general, like to shoot one 20-minute episode? And
We would start at 7 p.m.
right,
and on a very good night, it would go till midnight.
wow.
On a normal night, it would go to 1 or 2 in the morning. And we always had an audience. The audience was always there. And the audience, when Friends became bigger and bigger and bigger, they would have a giant line of people waiting to come in to see the show. And so the audience would come in, and if you're there till 11 o'clock or midnight, people have to go home. They have to go to work the next day, they have to babysitter, they have to drive 2 hours. So people would start to leave. But about the same time, the other shows that were filming on different stages, at the time, I'm not sure if they ever came to Italy, but there was the Brooke Shields show, and there was some other shows. I've forgotten their names, but they were okay. But those audiences would be leaving.
Wow.
And so all the pages, the interns, would be seeing these people going by and saying, do you want to watch the second half of Friends? And they would go, of course we want to see the second half.
Wow.
That's why we wanted to go to Friends in the first place, but it was sold out
People queuing to see that.
to see the second half.
Wow.
Wow.
And so that was always good.
Well, that tells you how important, like what a cornerstone of sitcom and
Yeah.
television it was, like the show. You have
Suddenly-
people queuing up.
Suddenly Susan was the name, and Caroline in the City. Those
Ooh.
are the other names.
We would have so many things to ask you about Friends, but I want to move a bit towards another period of your life that you worked on several shows after that, but when you landed in Disney, and especially I want to go a bit into the feel of the future time.
Mhm.
So for those who may not remember, Phil of the Future follows this family of 21 year, and then they accidentally get stuck in the early 2000 America. So it mixes up a bit of sci-fi and teen comedy. So Phil of the Future still follows this family and this kind of being displaced, feeling displaced, but then as an author, you are facing a different tone, different audience, and a total different system. How did it affect your instinct as a writer?
It was, for me, it became easier because the stories, because it was for kids, the stories did not have to be as complicated. They did not have to be as unique because many kids had not seen, they've only been watching television for a few years, so they've not seen every sitcom, every story. No kid is watching Phil the Future going, oh, they did that on Seinfeld 5 years ago. So it was
Back to the Future.
Yeah, or even Back to the Future. I got onto Phil of the Future because they had the first season on Disney Channel, and they did not like how it went. And so they fired everybody. And they thought I was writing by myself at the time, and I'd done some shows and worked on other shows and written some pilots that didn't go anywhere. And they said, we think 2 people need to do this show. So we think you can do it, and we think this other guy can do it. Why don't you meet and see if you hit it off, if you connect and can do these shows. And so I met, and that was with a guy named Roger Schulman. And he wrote, at that time, he had written Shrek. And so we both met up. We were both generally the same age. We had the same likes in comedy and television comedy.
How old were you?
How old was I?
Mostly.
43, about this time. And we both loved like Bugs Bunny cartoons, and we loved, just stuff like that kind of comedy. And so we hit it off, and so we said, okay. So we went in and we said to the Disney Channel, for season 2, here's what we would do. And Roger was very good at making charts and graphs and numbers and things like that. So it was whereas I would go, yeah, what he said. Yeah, exactly. Of course.
Whatever he
Why
said.
not? And so we got to basically do the show with the same ideas. Everything's the same. We didn't change too much. And so there we got to do a lot more comedy. There was more slapstick comedy, more jokes that are a little more not as sophisticated, more, I would say, more cartoon type jokes because it's for kids. And it was more fun. It was more fun to do. It was really like doing Friends was like you have to work and do it and be, think things through and make sure it all works. On something like Phil of the Future, it was like, oh, he falls down. It's great. And we had our own joke. We had jokes in there that were just for us and just for grown-ups. Because that was one of our theories was because in people's homes, Disney Channel is on all the time. At this time, this is a long time ago, it's not anymore. But if the 14-year-old sister is babysitting the 9-year-old sister, she can watch Disney Channel 2 and go get jokes that the other kids won't get. And same for parents. Like parents could watch the show and go, that's funny. I didn't know that was going to be on a kid's show, but that's pretty funny. But the kids don't know, not dirty jokes, but just more sophisticated jokes.
So it was not actually difficult for you to change the comedy tone so much?
No, I think because it was easier to do. It was more closer to my heart in the comedy.
Okay. So I want to stay a bit on the Disney Channel time, but shifting towards the Jonas time. So where
That
you
was Disney Channel.
That was Disney Channel, and you had such a different role because this time you were the co-creator with Robert Schumann. You were talking about before, but this time you were not just responsible for shaping the episode, but also the tone of the story. So.
Well, that was the same on Phil of the Future, where we were the executive producers and the showrunners of the show. We were the boss. And so we were all, whether Phil of the Future or Jonas, were doing costumes and picking actors and picking stories and running the room. On Jonas, we would spend, with the writers, when we're not shooting an episode, we're coming up with stories and scripts. And then we would be on the stage where they're filming the episodes. And back in the office, the writers are writing new episodes and coming up and doing our notes and things like that. We were very fortunate to have a guy who we met on Phil of the Future, a guy named Ivan Menchel, who was a brilliant writer and knew exactly what we wanted. So if we could leave him with the writers and the writing and go work on the stage with the actors and executing the scripts. And we knew that he was not doing anything crazy. We could come back, we would come back at the end of the day and look at what had been, the work that had been done and fix things and change things and do things like that. And 90% of the time it was, yeah, that's what I would do. So,
but creatively and practically you had the same amount of responsibility.
Yeah.
And you were talking about the pitch and the general ideas. In the past interviews, you mentioned that the pitch for Jonas changed a lot.
A lot.
Something like the monkeys and then a spy concept. And then
it started as we were after we finished Phil of the Future, Roger and I did a couple of pilots for Disney Channel. We did one pilot where we filmed it, which I thought was great, and it just didn't. It starred Allison Mashaka and AJ Mashaka, the sisters. Allison was the girl on Phil of the Future, Keeley. Really great pilot about a mysterious school, not Hogwarts, but a different kind of boarding school. And it was great, but they had our pilot, which was called Haversham Hall, or Wizards of Waverly Place.
Okay.
And they picked Wizards of Waverly Place. So after that we wrote a couple more, and one of them was a pilot about, there's a phenomenon in Los Angeles where every season, it's called casting season, where everyone's casting for the new shows.
Right.
And there's an apartment complex where all the people come, it's to stay for 1 weekend or 1 week or a month. And during casting season, it's filled with child actors. And so Disney Channel, we wanted to write a show about that. And Disney Channel said, great. So we wrote that. And I thought it was good. And then they said, this is good, but now we are in business now with this band called the Jonas Brothers. Do you think you could put them in this pilot? And we said no, because it's not made for 3 brothers. It's made for one boy who comes with his family to try and break into Hollywood. It's not 3 brothers. And they said, do it. Can you do it anyway? We said, yes, if you pay us again. So surprisingly, they said yes. So we wrote a new script, same story, but with the Jonas Brothers, and they said, yeah, that does not work. Can you think of another thing to do? And so we came up with the famous, infamous spy pilot, where it was basically the Jonas Brothers acting. Their cover story was their band, but they're really spies going to places where if you saw kids there, you wouldn't be suspicious. And we filmed that pilot, and it was a great pilot. But the dynamic just didn't quite work. It was too big, I think, for the Disney Channel. It was like $1 million. And so they said, so before we went in, before we came up with that, we went in and said, yes, we have a great idea, something like the Monkees. Anyone you remember the Monkees? You ever seen it?
The TV show, yeah.
So it's something like the Monkees, the guys living together, doing crazy things. And the Disney executives went, the Monkees? No. Ugh. Said, okay, how about their spies? So we did that. So then many, many weeks, many months go by, and they came back and they said, we want to try something else with the Jonas Brothers. Have you thought about something like the Monkees?
The Monkees.
And we went, that's a great idea,
Super
boss.
back.
Was it the same people?
Yes,
As well?
of course it was. It was the same guy.
Oh my God.
At
And-
what point did you tailor the story around the Jonas Brothers, not just as a band, but tailoring that around their personalities?
We hung out with them a lot. We went to a few concerts with them. We went on their tour bus once to go to a concert which was in San Diego, which is a couple hours south of Los Angeles. And it was like the Beatles. It was, they left this concert in their tour bus, and the bus on the freeway, cars are like circling around with it. These moms driving the car with like these 13-year-old girls going, wow, following the bus all the way back to Los Angeles. It was very strange. But so we realized, like for example, in the spy pilot, I think we had, because Kevin is the oldest, so he was the boss, and Nick is the youngest, so he's the younger brother who wants to join in, which is absolutely the opposite
Of their dynamic.
their dynamic. So by the time we came back again, we knew Nick is the boss. Joe is like the handsome guy who's always like
Nonchalant
yes,
guy.
and Kevin is very silly, very goofy, and so that we made it more like that. And we got to keep a lot of the people from the first pilot, which was good, like Chelsea Kane now.
Stella Malone.
Stella Malone. She was originally, in the first one, she was a reporter trying to break their spy cover. Now she became their stylist. Their dad was still their dad, the same guy came to play their dad. And it was just it was more closer to what their real life was, although, of course, very exaggerated for the Disney Channel audience. And again, we tried to stay with the same dynamic where there's jokes for 9-year-old girls, who is Disney's core audience, and for their siblings who are 15, who have to babysit them and also sit and watch Disney Channel all day long, and parents who would go, oh, that's funny.
Well, and it's also something that when you were saying that both kids and adults were laughing at, I noticed that it's really changing now. You could watch something like the latest Disney Channel products, like you sense that shift. You sense the tone is really more for child. Like you were still in a gap time where you could still laugh at that.
I think they're always trying to, when you're pitching them shows or you're doing research with them, they're always trying to they want boys, boys, boys. Because their audience is girls 9 to 11. That's Disney Channel. And they want boys 9 to 11, boys, whatever. That's why we did the spy pilot, because they thought that would get boys. When we were coming up with gadgets and things like spy gadgets and cool things for them to do. And we were showing them to the head of the Disney Channel was there, and he's like, it's all very expensive, very expensive. And we said, well, these are the things that are going to bring in boys. You want boys. And he said, no, the Jonas Brothers will bring the boys. And I was like, I went, almost. But luckily, no.
That's a line.
Because I would have been fired. But we were like, okay, he does not know what he's talking about. So they're always trying to get boys. And I think by the time we did the second Jonas Brothers, they were like, okay, girls. Girls 9 to 12 or 9 to 11. And that was the main Disney. I know Disney Channel's kind of gone away now. It's not really a thing anymore. But at this point, it was huge. It was.
Why did they invest so much in YA sitcoms? Disney in those years, especially.
because that led to all those kids' parents buying Disney merch and going to Disneyland. It's all about, the reason there are no commercials on Disney Channel is because the whole channel is a commercial
For this,
for Disney, for
Okay.
Disney, the Disney concept, Disneyland.
So the core of the business is really the merch.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
But now you say it's subsided a bit.
I'm not as into it as I was before, but from what I understand, it's just gone. Kids don't watch.
Right.
They're on their phones. They're watching TikTok. They're not sitting home watching Disney Channel. And we were talking earlier about how the thing has changed. When we were filming the Spy pilot, it was big, like Mission Impossible kind of big. And we were saying to the executives, this will be great. When you're watching this, it's going to be fabulous. It's going to look great on big TV. And they're going, no. It's got to look good on this. Because that's what the kids look on their phones.
Already.
And
Yeah.
that was when?
That would be 2008.
Already, 2008, they already said.
Oh,
Well, the
mm,
iPhone came out like a year before that,
Yeah.
basically. Wow.
They said kids are on their phones, so we don't care if it looks good like this. We want it to look good like this.
Because in 2008, you worked on one of the last TV shows with Disney that was Bizarre Work. Don't know if I'm spelling it right.
Bizarre Varg, yeah.
Bizarre
That was someone else's show, and I got to work on it as a consultant.
And is
There
there
was Olivia
something-
Rodrigo.
There's Olivia Rodrigo. And did you
Yes.
imagine like
Yes.
you can see there?
I didn't know I could say. I said she's going to be a movie star, and I didn't know she'd be a big singer, but she was great.
There was something in her.
And when we were casting the Jonas Brothers, we were looking for someone to be their friend, and we're looking at all these girls coming in, all these girls, nobody. And then the casting director said, so we met the head of Disney Channel, we saw like the last 5 girls. And the head of Disney Channel said, no, not yet. We don't have the girl yet. And he left. And the casting woman said, I have this one girl, sent in a tape. And take a look at it if you want. She made it herself, sent it in. And we watched it, and she was fantastic. And I ran down the hallway to his office, the head of Disney Channel's office. I said, Gary, his name was Gary. Gary, come back, you gotta see this one girl. And he looked at her, watched it, and he goes, okay, let's fly her in. And they did, and it was Demi Lovato.
Oh, Demi Lovato. Okay.
And so we came in, and Demi Lovato came in and auditioned. She was fantastic. She still had a gap in her teeth.
Oh.
And then she came with the Jonas Brothers, and Gary Marsh, the head of the channel, goes, this girl belongs on Disney Channel. And we went, oh, phew. And he goes, oh, not on your show.
On another one.
Oh, okay. Keep looking.
Wow. But just one curiosity before we shift. What do you think, or do you know why they really needed to brand a TV show around the Jonas Brothers? What was the need at that time? Because you said specifically tailor that around the Jonas Brothers. Why such a request?
I think they saw the Jonas Brothers earlier. And I think the Jonas Brothers were trying to get into TV. They were trying to expand their market. They had their own goals. And they went to Disney Channel went to them and said, let's try something. Because Disney's always looking for new talent. And I think that was just two powerful organizations meeting and finding a romance. And so it's like anyone, like they could have said, we found there's a 15-year-old girl who we really like, she's a great actress, can you think of something for her? Or it could have been anything, but in this case it was the Jonas Brothers.
Okay. So, again, I would ask you so many things about that also, but
Anything.
anything.
Unfortunately, we don't have that
Much
much time, but I
time.
mean, we
Are we out of film?
could speak for hours and hours, but
We want to move a
Yeah.
bit into the really the structure behind the whole process. You were mentioning before how you've noticed that the industry changed over time. Yet in 2018, you noticed so many small yet so big changes.
Mhm.
So what is something really the first thing that you noticed working on that TV show that was so different compared to the way you crafted TV shows before?
I think the difference was, for example, with Friends and all the shows in the 90s. The 90s were big time for American sitcoms. So a lot of money was going into it, and a lot of time and a lot of work was going into it. Like, for example, on Friends, and really any show might have 10, 11, 12 writers working on the show. Whereas if you go all the way to 2018, the profit is starting to go down, so these shows are not making back their money as much. So for example, on a show like Friends or Seinfeld or Frasier, you make 100 episodes, and that might only be half the show. The show might be on for 10 years, which would be 250 episodes. But once you hit 100 episodes, the studio, who's losing money making the shows, because the shows cost more than the advertising they make. Now they can take that and sell it to syndication, to Netflix or to whatever. And so, if it costs you, these are not real numbers, but say it costs you $100 million to make 100 episodes of Friends, that's not real. It would be more like 500 million. But then you take that, and when you have your 100 episodes, you can go sell it to HBO or to Netflix for $1 billion, and then you make your money back.
So the strategy has shifted.
Yes, so that's not so prevalent anymore. You don't see that very much, especially a place like Disney Channel, which doesn't do that. They only show them on Disney Channel. So for example, with the Jonas Brothers, with Friends, when Friends shows around the world, I still make money from my scripts, which is why I can live in Italy. But Disney Channel, no, they only show them on Disney Channel, whereas Friends is on Netflix or back in the 10 years ago on regular TV in America. The Jonas Brothers, only on Disney Channel. So if it's not showing on Disney Channel, I get nothing. Until Disney Plus came along.
Right.
And so now all those shows, Phil of the Future, Jonas Brothers, they're all on Disney Channel or on Disney Plus all the time now. And so now, not much, but I get money.
Okay,
So that's better.
this is actually a good side
For Disney Channel,
for the Disney Channel.
for me.
But in general, did they, so you were speaking about...
So now the shows, because they don't make as much money as they used to, the staff is getting very small.
Right.
They don't make, very rarely do they make 22, 24 episodes with 13 people on the staff. Now it might be 10 episodes with 5 people on the staff.
And
there's
in a writer room, how many people?
5 people.
5 people in there.
Does it impact the quality as well, in your opinion, like of the shows, or is it just a restriction in the amount of work they can put out? Or
I'm not sure if it affects the quality. I think they're going to, no, I don't think it affects the quality. It affects the lives of the people who call this their job.
right.
But I think it's closer to, say, like the British model, where with a British show, the one writer might write there might be 6 episodes, and the one writer who created the show might write all the episodes. And in the States, in the US, it's sort of a little bit closer to that model, where someone might create the show and they might write all the episodes. But it's just the amount of episodes has shrunk. So instead of working on 22 episodes in a year, or 8 months, you might be working on 10 episodes, hopefully 10 episodes.
Right. Yeah.
And so what you do in between, I don't know, I wouldn't know how to,
To do the
work.
same job today.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we see the strikes, for example, the SAG-AFTRA strikes as well.
That's what they're trying, that's what some of the strikes are, some of the topics of the strikes are having a minimum amount of people on staff.
Right.
So not doing, like, not for the network to say, we're only going to pay for 2 writers. You know, you have to say, you have to pay for 6 writers. And because 2 writers can't do the work, it's too hard. But, and of AI and all that stuff.
But like as an expert on sitcoms,
No.
like, we have to say, as a writer that specializes as well in writing sitcoms, do you believe like that they require big writing teams? So like of like those rooms of 15 people, 15 writers, or is it generally like disappearing? Just, you know, is it the chicken or the egg, which came first? But
I think on a show like Friends, where there was so much writing going on, it was very helpful. Like I said before, if each episode had 3 stories, a big story, an important story, a not so important story, and then a joke story, which might be only 4 mentions in the whole script. For example, if you threw out that joke story and by the end of the night you need a new one, you can send 3 people off, go come up with a new story. Like on Friends, there was one where the guy upstairs was stepping too hard on the floor, and each of the women went up to curse him out, and all you hear was somebody went off and did that, and then came back an hour later and said, oh, what about this? And performed that for us in the room, and we're all like, oh, thank God, yes, that's great.
And then everybody started standing.
Yes. And so that's, people can, you can do that, or you can, like I said, you can write one script in one night if you're desperate. Because, I mean, one person could not write one script in one night. But 13 people could, if each group is taking a little piece of the script, and then you bring it back together. So in that case, where there's a lot of writing, and Friends had a lot of writing on it, yes, that's very important. But I think on a smaller show, or a show that's a little not as big as Friends. I mean, Friends had 6 people, 6 starring people, not one person with some funny friends. That was very helpful. But on another show, yeah, I think you could have less people. Like I think Bizardvark, I think had 6 people.
6 people.
But do you see like shows like Friends, which are big, as I said, that they're almost a symbol of a monoculture, which was shared by everybody. So everybody watched Friends, everybody knew the characters, knew the episodes. Like now, is it
Those days are gone.
gone? Yeah.
Where like Friends was on Thursday night at 8 o'clock. The end. If you wanted to watch Friends again, you had to wait till next Thursday,
Right.
and you had to wait till next Thursday. And then in the summer, you might get to see that episode again in the reruns. And that was it. So now you can go and watch anything, anytime, any place, and it doesn't have that sort of
Bringing up
cultural
people.
bringing together.
Melding it
Even
together.
today, I still, on Thursdays, something in my head just goes, it's Thursday.
What's happening today?
It's a must-see TV. It was Friends, Frasier, Seinfeld,
There was the
So
Mad
a
Men
loving
time.
response.
and then later Mad Men. But like those 4 shows, and then the 10 o'clock, it would be like, I think it might have been ER.
Yeah, you're right.
That was Thursday night, and on NBC, and we would stop to watch Friends. And
I saw that picture recently of people stopping in Times Square looking at the last episode of Friends being aired, and it was such a foundation moment, and there was this parallelism with the last episode of The Sopranos, and they were saying no such moment will happen ever again, where people physically reunite to see something so symbolic of a certain age.
I think it's very, very true. I think because there's so much streaming now and so many channels and so much, everything is everywhere all the time.
But
Those
does the
moments-
market still exist for those type of shows, do you think? Or
To be honest, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you what a 24 episode show is now. I mean, there's one guy who's just prolific, is Chuck Lorre, who does like Big
Right,
Bang
yeah.
Theory and Young Sheldon, and now the pre-Young Sheldon. He does all the. He did what was that?
Two Broke Girls?
I
maybe?
don't know about Two
Not
Broke.
sure.
I'm not sure, but the guy with the two guys
I know him from the Big Bang.
Two and a Half
Theory.
Men.
Two and a Half Men. You're right.
things like that.
Yeah.
He still does 24 episode series and
Shows,
stuff
yeah.
like that, but very, very few. Very, very few.
But just a curiosity, we know that you had a pitch for HBO with Tom Hanks that maybe had to...
How do you know that?
I was
Did some research.
searching a lot.
Where? Where? I would like to know where that is, because I'd like to read about myself.
Is it true? First of all,
Yeah.
it's true. And what was it trying to explore, and what do you think prevented that from moving forward?
It was trying to explore, it was called X-Sex. And it was an idea from Tom Hanks about how people deal with each other, how people meet, and how people develop relationships with each other in the age of texting and dating apps. And the story was two people, a man and a woman, who both have had terrible relationships, and at the same time, they say, I will not have sex for 1 year. I will not have sex for 1 year. And the pilot episode ends with them meeting. They're perfect for each other,
Oh, wow.
and they meet. And it was a great episode. We worked on it with Tom Hanks, and I was with Roger Schulman. He knew Tom Hanks because he had written, he had done some
there
work.
was a TV show with young Tom Hanks. I know.
Young Tom Hanks.
Maybe work with.
No,
Really,
he-
I remember young Tom Hanks.
Bosom Buddies?
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's before. That's before
Okay.
even my time. That's when I watched Bosom Buddies when I was in college. It was I think he worked on a movie that Tom Hanks did with Julia Roberts. So he knew Tom Hanks, and so Tom Hanks would write some, and we would write some, and we'd put it all together, and Tom Hanks would make changes and things like that. But Tom Hanks, the reason I think it didn't happen, I think Tom Hanks lost interest in it. He has so many things going on that I think it just got lost in his world. And
What year was that?
this was probably 2016, maybe 2015.
Oh, very timely, yeah. Especially.
It was great. I liked it a lot. I liked the script a lot. So
That's
we would say
brilliant.
we would turn in our script, waiting for Tom to give us notes on the script, and we'd see a billboard on the road said Tom Hanks coming in, whatever, and we'd be waiting for our notes, and the billboard would change. Tom Hanks now coming in this new movie. Come on, Tom Hanks in this movie. We're going.
Follow up
Project.
for Tom Hanks.
We're never gonna get this made. Tom Hanks is too busy.
But that's such a actual idea, like to explore the modern world of relationship.
Yeah, it was great. And we went to. He had a deal with HBO.
Oh.
And so we went to HBO one day it was me, Roger Schulman, and Tom Hanks is producer. And we went to HBO, and he said, this is just going to be a practice. We're just going to sort of run it by HBO. We'll see where they think. It's just practice. You two don't talk.
I like that.
So, okay,
Okay.
that's fine with us. So we sat on the couch, and Tom Hanks said, yeah, it's this. We went, okay, great, so anyway. And we left, and by the time I got home, my agent called me and said, did you sell a show? Our agents knew nothing about this. We were just doing it quietly. And our agent said, did you sell a show to HBO? I go, no, it's practice. He goes, no, you sold the show to HBO.
So the pitch went very well, I mean.
They went, okay, fine. I mean, it's Tom Hanks. He
Right.
basically invented HBO with Band of Brothers and
Yeah,
everything. But, so they said, okay.
Did you have also the co-star in mind already?
No.
No.
No co-star. Tom Hanks, I think, there was a character of the dad of the main character, who was a retired guy who just played golf all the time. And I secretly think Tom Hanks wanted to play that character.
Wow. Okay.
What sort of character was it?
It was like a guy. He lived the show took place in Albuquerque, same as Breaking Bad.
Interesting. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't know why, but so he just lived in a townhouse and was retired and drank too much and played golf all the time. Did nothing but play golf and offered his son advice and.
So very unlike Tom Hanks in his usual role.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
But there's something of the burbs in there. You
Yeah,
know?
a little bit, yeah.
Like him being in this neighborhood
Yeah.
and watching life go by somehow.
So, yeah, I think that's on my computer still. That script. I'll look and see it. I liked it. So
What
it's-
if someday will happen?
Yeah. Hopefully.
Let's send some follow-up.
I remember Roger was going to his high school reunion, and he's like going, I don't know if I want to go because I'm not doing anything. It's like, I did this and I did this, and right now I'm not doing anything. I said, what are you, crazy? You're doing a show on HBO with Tom Hanks. And he went, oh yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot.
I just forgot about it. I wanted to ask a question generally, like also that perhaps our audience might be interested in is nowadays, like speaking with all the experience that you've built over the years, how would you navigate these, like the industry, the business, as both a screenwriter, but as showrunner and as a producer? Like, what advice would you give, or how has it changed? Like, considering the changes as well, like compared to when you were first.
I would say I think it's so different now that I don't recognize it. Compared to when I first started in, say, early 91 or whatever, 1991. I don't recognize it, and I don't think I would understand how it works. Then it was like you come up with an idea. There was a time where you come up with the ideas. There's a time when you go in to pitch them. There's a time when they buy them. There's a time when they make them. Now it's sort of all over the place. Everything is so fractured. Everything is so there's so many different people. There's so many different formats. I just don't know how. Just because I've been out of it for 4 or 5 years now, 5 or 6 years now, that it's just I wouldn't know how to do it. And my thing, this is what I've been telling people even before that. Do it yourself. You can take cameras like these are as good as any camera they used to use back in the day when they were this big. And I've seen people, friends of mine, actors who are tired of not getting jobs as actors, wrote and starred in this was 10 years ago, wrote and starred in their own sitcom, not with like an audience, but
right,
like single camera show. And it was on YouTube, and it looked no different from it looked no different from Girls or Malcolm in the Middle or any of those shows. These are very dated references, but it's so easy to do it. I mean, the lighting package like this, I'm not going to guess, but it's definitely cheaper than it was 20 years ago. The cameras are cheaper.
Yeah,
You could
right.
do it yourself. You get your friends, your talented friends, and do it and put it on YouTube, or put clips on TikTok or whatever, and that leads to YouTube, and do it yourself. And if it becomes successful on YouTube, I know you're not going to make giant Hollywood money, but even that money's not there really anymore. It's not the 90s anymore. But for creative health, you don't have to go through all this stuff. You don't have to change things for people who don't really know what they're talking about. And and stuff, and you might have more creative success. And you would probably have more fun doing it.
Maybe there's one thing that today hadn't changed much, the classic elevator pitch. What do you think? Maybe in such broad networks you had
Have you
so
done
many.
it? Have you done some elevator pitches?
Really an elevator.
I came up in one pilot I was doing. I was going to meet a comedian, a big famous comedian at the time. His name was Dane Cook, who everyone hates
Right.
now, but I really liked him. And I was going to meet with him, and I had nothing to give him. I had no ideas, no nothing. And as I was in the elevator, going up to the meeting, I thought, well, I wrote this other thing, and there was a character in it who I really liked, and this was his story. And so I'm going to pitch that. What about this guy? What about a guy like this? Because they were sort of similar characteristics.
Mm-hmm.
And he liked it. And so we developed that character. I've never said to someone in an elevator, what about this? But I've said, in my head, I've said, what about this?
And what do you think makes a pitch stick for real?
If it's unique and original, I think if it's something no one's heard before, like the joke is, Frankenstein at college.
Okay.
So you can summarize it in 2 words.
Something
Smaller
like that,
is,
yeah. The person go, okay, I can see that.
Okay.
That's a silly one, but
But a
but-
mix of the original story and
Yeah.
also the way you pitch.
or something that makes it stand out.
And survive of the
yeah.
whole process.
Simple makes perfect, so be very
Yeah,
concise.
simple. Yeah, it's an elevator pitch. You have 30 seconds.
Such a foundation moment.
Yes.
Michael, before we close, there's something more on the creative side that we're curious about. Sometimes they say that early influences tend to stick with us longer than we expect. Is there a book or a movie that really shaped your way to approach storytelling or a character in general?
I think a lot of the stuff that I like is when it's funny but not a joke. But it's sort of real life funny. Like, for example, when on Friends, there was a joke where Ross said, he goes, my dad was crying. It's like, that's the first time I've seen my dad cry. I haven't seen my dad cry since I was 5 years old, and I cleaned his new Porsche with rocks. And just stuff like that it sounds very real. That could really happen, and it sort of comes out of real life. And so I liked things like that where, as far as TV goes, I liked shows like The Wonder Years, or I don't know if that came to Italy, but movies like The Bad News Bears, the original Bad News Bears, about the kids playing baseball, little kids playing
Okay.
baseball. There was very real. It wasn't about joke. It was just real stuff that was funny.
And what was funny to you, just to go a little bit into that, what was the really foundation moment for you about that?
That, because I played baseball when I was a little kid, and now as a grown-up, or I was watching that when I was a teenager, so you can look at it and go, I know that person. That really happened. And yes, that coach was a drunk. And yes, that little kid used a lot of bad words and things like that. And so you just take something that's real like that, that's not just joke, like bada bada bada, bada bada bada, laugh, kind of
Yeah.
thing. It comes from a more real place.
Things that mix all of that up were more foundational for you.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, it has to be funny, or else it's a drama. But, so there are jokes in it, but my favorite are the ones that, if you look at it by itself, it might not be funny, but if you look a little bit further into it, you go, oh, I understand why that's funny.
And if you had to give us a book title that was fundamental
Well,
for you?
My favorite book is Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Oh, okay.
That's my favorite. I had I had an interview with a reporter, Italian reporter, and she said, "What? Interview over?" And I said, "No."
She was disappointed.
She goes, "I hate that book." I said, "No, it's a great book."
Giacomo, what's yours?
My book?
Or a movie?
Movie.
Round table about foundation.
I mean, it's too broad a question.
My favorite book of all time is Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings,
Yeah, that's it.
of all time.
My favorite movie of all time is A Hard Day's Night
Oh,
with the Beatles. The best movie is Casablanca.
the best movie. Okay,
That's what I think. That's what I think.
A
I would
classic.
say Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I know we went to an event recently, and it was Tornatore's favorite book. But honestly, like it's my favorite book, and it deserves that spot, like the 100 Years of Solitude,
Mhm.
which is just eye-opening in the sense. I was always like. Generally speaking, I'm always of the opinion if it can be turned into a movie, it's better as a movie. I know it's a bit controversial, but that's generally one of those books that, in my opinion, is no, you just read it. Don't try making a movie about it, even though there's a Netflix TV series about it. But
Right.
still,
That, I remember reading Jurassic Park, the book, the first time.
The book.
And I read it in one night. And then I read an article with somebody asked the author, Michael Crichton, they go, "What are you writing now?" And he goes, "The best movie ever made." And I was going, yeah, I could see it reading it.
Yeah.
I go, "Yep, this is going to be a great
there are
movie."
those as well, yeah.
But Casablanca is such a good answer.
Yeah.
It's funny, it's dramatic.
And what about
It has
you?
it all. My foundation movie is Ferris Bueller Day Off with Matthew Broderick. The way he breaks the fourth wall was so
That's
striking.
another movie in my top 10,
Right?
which I've seen. I've seen it easily. I've seen it 100 times.
Right, like the way...
I saw it 20 times when it came out.
And the Beatles scene in the parade one
Yep.
is so funny.
Yep, I love. Yeah, Ferris Bueller's Day Off is great.
That's something that used to happen as well. You would go to the movie theater, rewatch.
Yeah, I had at the time, especially for Ferris Bueller. At the time, I was working on. This is talk about do it yourself. When I got out of college, my friends and I went to a TV station near where we lived, and we could use all the equipment. And so we just made our own TV show that was on because the TV they had to offer time for the public. And so
Wow.
it would be channel 400, but people could do their own TV show. So we would do a TV show. So when I was driving to this studio to work on this, and then driving home, the movie theater that was showing Ferris Bueller was there. So I would go there to work, and then on the way home, I would stop and watch Ferris Bueller every day.
Alone?
Yes.
Wow. Such a beautiful experience, also memory to share.
It's always like a cinema culture which has, it's different times, but it's
Yes.
almost romanticized, I think, because I mean most of us are cinephiles here, so in that sense.
Yeah, you could only go to the movies, to the movie theater,
Yeah.
because
Right.
if a movie was in the movie theater, it's not going to be on TV for 2 years, 3, 4 years, once.
Once. But making your own TV show, it's something crazy to
It was very
imagine.
silly and not very good.
If you had to pitch that,
But did they broadcast it as well on the?
Yes, it was nominated for Emmy Awards. We were, as a
Really?
joke, we said, this will be funny. Let's
Yeah.
take our stupid show and put it in the Emmy, nominate it for local Emmy Awards, local. And it got nominated, and we were like, what?
Wow.
And I think if we put it in for show,
Yeah.
and you could also put it in for writing, and we didn't do writing because we were joking. But if we had done for writing, I think we would have won. Based on what the winners were. But based on the winner of the writing, it was like,
it's crazy.
And how old were you when you did this? So,
23.
wow. Well, that-
It was right out of
yeah,
college.
It's quite yeah.
A bit of the room in there, the disaster artist. No,
Yes.
Do they
different
still
story.
have this program, or is it?
No, this
it's
was
finished.
in Yeah, I think there was only about 8 episodes, and then when we're filming an episode, people had real lives, they had real job to go to, and people were getting married. So I think on the final episode, something was wrong with the tape in the machine. This is on videotape. And so we had everything we had been doing for 2 days was ruined. And we just went, oh, forget it. And that was the end. That was the end of the show.
Crazy.
I don't want to do that again.
Maybe there's the Tom Hanks still.
Yes.
Let's think about it. Anyways, thank you, Michael.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for coming all this way.
Thank you for meeting us and doing this fantastic interview. I mean, I wish we could speak for more, but I think our cameras are pretty much dry.
Thanks for doing it in English.
And it was such a pleasure also
really.
to hear all your journey.